Right, let's see if this one works. Right, this time we can see you.
And
But
I can hear you.
hey, there we go. Right, let's pop the
All
window out.
right.
Hey, so restarting the PC works then, eh?
I guess so. It's the old school method of fixing things. Just reset it.
the the IT crowd route, turn it off and on again.
Yeah, basically. If only there was something to blow on, like the old NES cartridges, then then I would do that too.
Something to blow on. Right, so it took 60 seconds for an innuendo to come out. I think that could be a record.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's the kind of that's the kind of conversation I think you guys can expect for this one.
To be honest, I think if there's anybody in chat that was expecting it to go any different, they're just lying to themselves. But Venusaur, welcome on in, man. I'm first and foremost, thank you for agreeing to come on. I think it was it last week or the week before that I messaged you?
But yeah, we've had a couple messages. Yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome. I love podcasts. I love sort of like audio content. I mean, I know there's a video component here, but I listen to podcasts, and so I think this is really cool. And yeah, ready to hang out and chat.
Happy days. So the first thing that I want to ask you, right? What is that effects that you've got with your camera there? Because that looks awesome.
It's just like a blurring effect, and I think the settings are within Discord itself. There,
Okay.
I mean, technology is great. It kind of just focuses in on the person and then blurs everything in the background. So, yeah, I forgot that I had this up when I did a video call previously on Discord. So it kind of just worked out because I was. Not that I care about what's in the background too much, but it's helpful.
Well, it does look really cool. It kind of feels as if I've either been drinking or taking something, or maybe a combination of the two.
That was last night. I had some wine with dinner. Had a nice dinner.
Well, I went out for lunch yesterday. Wasn't intending on drinking yesterday. I was intending on streaming basically for as long as I've been streaming today. But I was going for coffee with a friend in the morning. She came and picked me up, and then she's like, "Do you know what? I'm really hungry. Shall we? Do you fancy going for some lunch?" And I thought, well, I'm not in a rush, because obviously I've not stated a time that I was going to be on stream. Just said I'd be live at some point. But then naturally we sat in a restaurant, pint of Guinness with me lunch, and I'm like, yeah, let's go and have a couple.
Yeah, that's how it goes. It's like, oh, I'll have one glass. All right, well, I finished this glass, so might as well have another.
Well, you see, we say that we'll only have one. What we don't say is how many only ones that we're going to have.
Right, exactly. Just one more. And then before you know it, you're like, "What happened last night?" No, to be honest, though, I think I stopped sort of drinking that way a long time ago. Probably no, not college. I probably a few years after college. When you're in your 20s, that's just how it is. But now it's like just beer and wine and. Sort of in moderation. Sometimes I'll have the whole bottle of wine, and then the next morning I'm like, oh, why did I do that?
Well, I don't know if you were the same, but like I'd say in my late teens, early 20s, I was more than capable of finishing work on a Friday, heading to the pub, going home Sunday evening, waking up Monday feeling fine for work. And now these days, I have a fair couple, and I require like 2 weeks and minor surgery to recover from
Right.
it.
Right. You have to go on leave in order to recover.
Yeah, and I think it's just one of those things that happens with age, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in college, that's how it was. Like you would stay out till 3, 4 a.m. Hanging out. Then you would come back and probably hang out a little bit more until the sun rises, and then you would go to class in like a couple of hours after that. Or I also had like a part-time job, so sometimes I would go to that. So yeah, I look back on that and I'm just like, how is that physically possible? Like, how is that? I don't know how I got through that, but I did. And then, yeah, even in your mid-20s, like I started working as a teacher, which is really hard. And then I was also going to grad school at the same time. So there were certain days I wouldn't get home until like 9:30 or 10, and some Saturdays I'd have to go to class and stuff. But I would still sometimes go and hang out, party until relatively late. Not 4 or 5 in the morning, but 12 a.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and then get up and do it all over again. And it just, I don't know how, man. We were just built different back then.
Yeah, and do you know what? I look back at some of my earlier days when I was, when I was in college and university. I mean, I didn't last long at university. I think I was there for 4 months. I wasn't really bothering with my studies too much. I was more interested in the social aspects of it, which is why eventually I gave it up, because I thought, I'm paying all of this money to study a course that I'm basically not studying. I'm just going out partying all the time. So, it made a lot more sense for me for me to move back home, get a job. The idea being was that I'd go back to my studies in a couple of years' time, and I just never did. Stayed working because, I don't know, I think it was a case of that I'd always said I'll go back to university when I feel like I'm ready, like when I feel like I've got my priorities about me. And in my mid to late 20s, I was seriously considering it. And then my partner at the time, very selfishly, got pregnant. So that went out the window. Entirely her doing, right? It didn't involve... Right. Well, I mean, to be fair, apart from the first 3 minutes, it basically didn't involve me anyway.
Wow.
You're saying wow, but 3 minutes was a PB.
There you go.
So, Venu...
Also, when you're young, those are your PBs when you're young.
Oh, of course. So, Venu, you and I have known each other now for... I mean, how long is it you've been in the team for now? About a year, 18 months, give or take, something like that? Maybe a bit longer?
Yeah, probably about a year and a half, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'd been watching you for a couple of months prior. I think I met you through Josh, if memory serves. I think that's how I found your channel, was through Josh raiding you. Because I know you and Josh, you two have known each other for quite some time now, haven't you?
Yeah, almost as soon as I started streaming, just getting involved with the community. I just wanted to watch as many people doing the same thing that I'd like to do, which is playing Resident Evil or playing horror games or speedrunning, whatever. But yeah, and I caught your stream through the Team RPD sort of community, and yeah, I mean it's been great ever since. Just finding people that I was like, even growing up, I didn't know that many students that I went to school with, right? Because when Resident Evil came out, I was a kid in school, and not that many other kids played Resident Evil. It was just like me and like one other person, like that was it. And so over the years, I just thought, oh, this is just a thing that I'm into. And then, as the internet expanded and, I found Reddit and YouTube and all these other things, you're like, oh, wow, there's a lot of other people that like this. And then found Twitch and then, yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest thing at first was just hanging out in people's streams and chatting. And then I wanted to try it myself. And so I did. And then getting to do that race with Josh Sandwich and Snake SOCOM, as he's known now. But back then it was, what was it? Solid Snake 16 or something like that.
Yeah.
Because there were 15 others that had the same idea as him.
Well, you see, what still to this day pains me about that race is I was actually supposed to be the fourth entrant, but the computer that I was using at the time was complete arse. Like, I remember Matt asking me if I wanted to be involved, and at first I said yeah. And then I did a couple of streams from the PC. One of them, I remember running the trilogy, and I had a former friend of mine doing commentary for me live on a Discord call, and we figured out that I think there was a 5-minute delay. Like, that's how bad the computer that I was using was. So in the end, I just said, look, I don't think my computer's good enough to be able to handle it, which is why I never ended up running. And if memory serves, I know that Snake died. I want to say he died in the labs, if I remember that rightly. Who was it that won between you and Josh?
Josh won.
Was it?
Yeah. I think he had sort of a pretty flawless run. I think he only took the one bite that you're supposed to take early on in the run, and that's where the that's where the love-hate relationship sort of began, because he had probably the jab of the event, where he said, "Oh, you guys have been bit. What's that like?" And he said it so casually.
I remember that
casually, yeah. That everyone had a pause for it. There's like a 3-second pause where it was like, "Wait, what did he just say?" And then we all just started laughing, and so yeah. And then I've been hanging out on his streams ever since. I know he's on a break right now, but he always puts on good streams too, and Snake as well, and you. And so it's always just interesting getting to chat with people. I mean, here's the thing. I feel like our community, we could talk about Resident Evil every stream, every day. Like, it doesn't get old because we're fans of it. So there's a level of comfort in that, and there's a level of like, yeah, I know I'm gonna turn on this stream today. I'm gonna chat with some friends about things that we all enjoy, and that sort of, I think, keeps this community together. And like how, why after almost 2 years, I guess, we're still going strong.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I love about, in particular, speedrunning, because you've sort of always got something to aim for until you get to, obviously, the levels of like Pyramid K or Pessimism, where you're just the GOAT in the particular board that you're on. Right. Until you get to that level, you've always got something higher to aim for. Like, for example, I was mentioning earlier about Resident Evil 3 when I first started running that. And before Josh or Jomizus taught me the run, I think I was running at like an hour 10, an hour 15, something like that.
Yeah.
And I've known Josh for quite a while now. I think I've known him for about 2 years. And he just says to me, look, I know the run quite well. If you want, I'll teach it to you. So I started running it, and I think my first run after he showed me was like 52 minutes, something like that. So then the aim then was, right, let's get this below 50 minutes. Let's get under 50. Gets to under 50, and then it's right, let's get under 49. And it just builds and builds like that, where, you can start a run with a particular goal in mind, but then I don't believe you ever just settle with that. Like, you'll hit that goal, and then you're like, right, well, I want better now.
Mm-hmm. It's very much like how this conversation started with talking about you're just going to go get one drink, and then you're like, I'll just have one more, and then just one more. And right. It's with the speed running, it's you're right. Like I've set goals for things where I'm like, well, the most recent one, I've taken a break from speed running. I've been doing a lot of casual playthroughs recently, but the last game that I was speed running heavily was RE2 OG, and I said for Leon that that category, I was like, all right, I'm going to get under 50 minutes. That's sort of like the benchmark that everyone says is the you get sub 50, and now you're considered one of the good runners. So I got the sub 50, and I was like, wait a second, I have like an easy like 10 to 15 seconds of time save. I can get more. And so you just keep on grinding and grinding and grinding, because and then there's so many category extensions too that uh, there's no shortage of I want to say content, but for me, I whatever I do on stream, I do because I enjoy it. So it's content for me, right? Like there's no shortage of stuff that I'm interested in. Like I'm interested in doing like, you know, shotgun only, bowgun only, or trying a new game, you know, speed run or whatever. But yeah, so there's no shortage of it.
Is has Bogan only recently been added to the category extensions? Because I feel as if that's all of a sudden become really popular. Like I see quite a few people running Bogan only now.
It's been there for a while. You can see some run submissions that are a couple of years old, so it's been there for a while. But it's become popular because some streamers who are themselves becoming popular are trying it. Yeah. I think recently I've seen a lot of like I've seen a subsection of like this RE speedrun community kind of shift now, and I see a lot of them running Dino Crisis, which is like, I mean, it's fine, you know, you speedrun whatever you want, but like I think to your point, there are these trends of, okay, everyone's doing this category or this game, and I think it's less of like, oh, just jumping on the bandwagon and more of, wow, this looks fun, I want to try it too, you know? Because I think that's how it felt for me. I just thought, man, this looks like so much fun what these speedrunners are doing. Little did I know how much hell I was going to go through with just resets and stuff with certain games. But yeah, I think it's just like, hey, this looks fun, so let's give it a try.
Oh, dude, speaking of resets, I mean, you and I have ran 3OG. I don't think there's a more reset run than 3OG. And I think I sort of mentioned this with the last stream that I did running it. I think the current splits that I'm using have got me with, I think it says 140 something runs, and if I've finished 20 of them, I'll be very, very surprised, because you know how that game goes. That game is just hell.
Yeah. But and that's sort of the difficult thing, I think, especially if you're streaming it. You know, if you're playing offline, whatever. But if you're streaming it, you have to balance this, like, hey, I still want people to hang out here. So I don't want to keep showing them the first 45 seconds of the game. So sometimes you got to just kind of accept a crappy start and keep going.
Yeah, and you know what? There's been plenty of times where I've had a really bad start. Probably a bad example to use because I ended up dying, but take the race that I had against Matt and B-Mel. So we were all using the same splits, which was my PB splits. And both Matt and B-Mel getting into RPD were running in the green. So they were actually running ahead of my PB time. And I think I was something like plus 40, because when I say I had a bad basement, like, it was legitimately one of the worst basements that I have ever seen in my life. It was absolutely horrendous. So going into RPD, I'm on like plus 40, where you'll know yourself that run gets reset. All day long, that run gets reset. But obviously I'm racing, so I can't. And by the time I was going into the Acid Nemi fight, I was minus 2 minutes. I was on for a 2-minute PB. And then Acid Nemi beats Acid Nemi. We all know what he's like.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was before with this section of speedrunning RE3, I got the fight consistent, because I used to run RE3 a good few months back and then put it down for a while. And I did get Acid Nemi quite consistent. And the last sort of sections of me running RE3 now, I do feel like I've got it consistent again. Although it's been a few weeks since I've run it, so the probability is now I'll do another run and he'll absolutely poon me like he does. But speaking of speedrunning, can you remember what the first game you ever attempted a speedrun on was?
So the first game I attempted to speedrun, there's two answers to that. The first answer is like streaming wise, it was Resident Evil 1 OG. Because I mean that was, I don't know. I guess at the time it was like, I thought it would be like the easiest run, and it was the one that I saw a lot of people still running. And I was like, let me just start from the beginning. Let me start with one. So that was the first one I ran. But I would say that I made attempts at speed running years ago. Just playing RE3 OG on like my PlayStation 2, like years and years ago, where I would, it was like, oh, if you beat the game in under a certain amount of time, you get this. And I was like, well, let me see if I can, bless you, let me see if I can, if I can beat the game even faster than that, and then faster than that. And so it, like, at the time I was a teenager or whatever, I didn't have any idea of the concept of speed running, but because the game lends itself to going fast because of the rewards that you get for beating it in certain times, it sort of, it kickstarted the idea of, well, let's see just how fast I can do this. And I think I can't remember, I don't even know if like I don't even know if like you go into the memory card of a PlayStation memory card and see your finish times. Maybe you could, but I think I got like under 2 hours on console for, and that's like not knowing any strats. That's like not knowing anything. But to be fair, I'm sure I was using like New Game Plus items and all of that. So, but just the idea of, let me finish the game as fast as I can. So that seed was planted a long time ago.
Right, I see. I mean, to be honest, I didn't even consider speedrunning. I want to say until I met Matt. I mean, quite similar to yourself, back in the day, I would try and see just how quickly I could finish the game. Back in the day, when I was in my teens, early 20s, mine was Resident Evil 2. I felt casually the Resident Evil 2 was probably the one that I was best at. And what I used to do was what I used to call the ABBA, but then realised that I'd got that totally wrong. So I'd do Leon A, Claire B, and then I'd do Claire A, Leon B. With the idea being get the S rank on every single run. And if memory serves, I think in order to do that, I think there's 3 different criteria and you have to meet at least 2 of them. And I believe it's the A side, you have to beat it in under 2.5 hours. B side, I think it's under 3, and you have to either get the time, not use any saves, and not use any first aid sprays. And I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong on this. If anybody in the chat knows any different, then please do feel free to let me know. But I believe as long as you met 2 out of those 3 criteria, you got the S rank. And I remember doing it for the first time, which was years and years after playing Resident Evil 2 for the first time. And then obviously when you do that, you then unlock the fourth survivor, and is it called Extreme Battle Mode or something like that?
It's some type of battle mode, like something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember unlocking that for the first time and thinking, I've been playing this game for years and years. How did I not know that these 2 modes exist? But
I've thought about doing that recently, just like trying to unlock everything. But I was recently made aware of this like retro achievements emulator, and I am super excited about that because I love achievement hunting.
Yeah,
so I think I'm going to get into that pretty soon.
Yeah, I tried getting that going on DuckStation, and for some reason I can't seem to get it to work. I think there's only certain games that it works with, and certain versions of said game that it works with.
Yeah, you also have to download a specific emulator. I don't think DuckStation is supported by this achievement thing. I can send you the website. What I will say is that this emulator is amazing because you can, like, it's like a hub for basically every emulator that exists, and you can boot up any emulator, PS1, Super Nintendo, Sega, all within the same program.
Oh, wow.
You just have to supply the ROM files,
Yeah.
and then it has to be the version that's supported with the achievements. So, like for example, I was testing out Resident Evil 1 achievements, and I thought, well, let me download the DualShock version of the director's cut. That one's not supported. You have to get just the regular director's cut, not the DualShock version. So in that sense, it's a little bit specific in terms of the achievements that you can get. But the library of games and systems supported by this one program, you don't have to download different emulators. It's all supported in this one program. Whoever worked on this put in a lot of time because they compiled everything. And then there's achievements for thousands of games. And you're talking, dozens or hundreds of achievements per game. We're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of achievements total. It's a rabbit hole that I'm excited to go down.
I'm definitely going to have to check that out because, I mean, as soon as you mentioned Resident Evil 1, then, I'm sitting here now and I'm trying to sort of gain an idea as to what kind of achievements would be on there. And obviously you're going to have your generic ones like get to this point in the game, get to that point, blah, blah, blah. And then it would be really intriguing then to see what achievements on top of that would be in there. I mean, I can imagine beat the game without using a first aid spray. I could picture that being one.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked through the whole list, but I mean, we're gamers. We know how these things work, and yeah, there'll be timed ones. There'll be like no damage achievements. Most likely, there'll be defeat this enemy with a particular item achievement, like whatever it may be. It's we know that's what we're going to encounter.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could look at the achievements for RE1 Remake to gain an idea.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering whether beat the game only using the knife on RE1 OG would be one, because I can imagine that being. Although I've never actually tried it myself, I did at one point put a community challenge up for me to do it, and I've just realised
it's doable. It's doable.
Oh, I don't doubt the fact that it's doable. I'm just wondering whether it's easier or more difficult than the remake.
I think it's easier. I just knowing like how the knife works in like some of the other games and the level of difficulty of the game itself. Like, if you think about it, the Chris speedrun for RE1 OG is pretty much knife only until the very end. So really all you got to do is practice knife on the final tyrant. And that one, which I have done before, is not... It's not as hard as you think in terms of like, using the knife, then dodging, then using the knife, then dodging, or, cornering tyrant or whatever it may be. It's not as bad. So that might be another reason why I'm starting with RE1 OG, because that one seems to be like the easiest in terms of doing these various things. I'm sure once I get into like 2 and 3 that it's going to be, the achievements are going to be far more difficult.
I can imagine so, yeah. Sorry, I had a question in my head then, and it just completely went. I've been up for a while. I've been live now for like, how long have we been on? 9.5 hours.
Oh my goodness! Yikes! That's a lengthy one, dude.
Well, initially my idea today was I was going to stream for a couple of hours in the morning, then have a couple of hours off, and then come back on to do the podcast, and then I've got a giveaway that I'm doing later on. So I was going to, take a few hours in between. But I've been playing the Final Fantasy VIII Crystal mod, and I've just got into it that much that I've been sat here all day like, yeah, right, I'll get up to this section, and then I'm getting up to it and thinking, right, well, I'll just carry on to here, and I've just not stopped all day.
Right. Yeah, the longest stream I've ever done is I think like 6.5 hours, and that felt like forever. I don't know if I could ever do like a 24-hour marathon. I know so many people have done it. I don't think I can do it. I can't even stay up that long. I would be in pain. So I think if I were ever to do a challenge or something like that, I might try a 12-hour, but even then, that is a hefty commitment. I would need to be like on vacation from work for several weeks in order to try and pull that off.
To be honest, after I mean, I've done a couple of 24 hours now. I think we were talking about this earlier on. I think I've done, I want to say 5. Yeah,
Wow.
I think it's 5. Um, and if you approach it right, it's not as bad as what you may think. I mean, I hold my hands up and say that it's certainly not easy. Definitely not easy. Um, I think the first 12 hours it's okay. I think you're sort of getting yourself set. I think the the parts where it gets really difficult, I'd say are between, I'd say 16 to 20 hours in. Once you get past the 20-hour mark, you sort of get your second wind because you know you're on the
Yeah.
final stretch, and you know that
Yeah.
it's the last section. But yeah, certainly between 16 to 20 hours that can be really really difficult, especially if your chat's pretty quiet as well, because then you can feel yourself fading and you're realizing that you're not talking as much.
Yeah.
The one thing that I would say is key with a 24-hour stream is preparation. You've got to make sure you've got enough liquids to keep you hydrated. Make sure you've got some food prepared to keep you going. But mental preparation for it as well, because if you just go into it off a whim, I'm telling you now, you won't do it. You will not get through 24 hours. It's just not going to happen.
You got to psych yourself up.
Oh, big time. I think it also helps if you've got some kind of event as well. Instead of just randomly doing a 24-hour stream,
Yeah.
like say you're doing it for some sort of milestone or you're doing it for a charity or something like that. If you've got a reason that you're doing it for, I think that kind of spurs you on as well.
Yeah.
I think everyone but my first 24 hour has all been for charity, so that's kind of helped me get through it, thinking, well, yeah, I'm knackered. I really want to go to bed, but I'm trying to raise money for this charity, and it kind of gives you that extra bit of a boost. But yeah, it can be very, very tough.
I don't think I'd ever be able to do it. I don't care how much coffee I have or how many energy drinks I have. Like there's not enough to keep me awake that long. I really value my sleep.
Fair enough. I mean, obviously, it's one of those, and it's not something that everybody would even want to try and do. Never mind, actually do.
Yeah.
Um, so I know obviously you've been on the platform for quite some time now. What was it in particular about Twitch that sort of brought you to the platform and made you stick with it?
I mean, I think it was sort of just the primary live streaming platform for gaming at the time. I mean, there were others, but whenever I guess what got me into it was I started watching like GDQ speed runs on YouTube, and it was all like via Twitch. Or I would like look up the name of one of the runners, and I would see, oh, they have a Twitch account. And I was like, oh, I'm not gonna really watch Twitch. But then I got into the speedrunning thing, and I was like, all right, let me check it out. So I go on Twitch, and I see this like huge community of people, and it kind of just it went from there. So YouTube to me always felt like a pre-recorded content platform.
Yeah.
And so that's what I saw that as. Twitch seemed like the live streaming platform. So and that's where these runners that I had discovered, that's where they were going to be. And so once I had run out of YouTube videos to watch, I was like, well, I kind of want to see this in action. So yeah, that's kind of what drew me in.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I like about Twitch as well, like you say, with the whole live stream kind of platform is being able to interact with that person that you're watching. Because obviously, if you're watching a pre-recorded run, you're watching something on YouTube, naturally you don't have that capability. And that's one of the things that I like about Twitch the most. Because you do get people, I know it's something that you're very good at, it's something that I try to do, but you do get the people that, even though, you know, they're really focused on the run and they're going for these PBs and they're going for these really good times, that are still able to interact with chat and still engage. Yeah, there's going to be points where you can't, you know, there's points where you're like, right, I really need to focus on this one particular section. For me, that's just the entire game, because I suck. Well, the whole interactivity of it, I think, is what sort of got me. Because when I first joined Twitch, I think it was 6 months after I'd separated with Isaac's mum. I lived in the flat on my own, and it was when obviously we went into lockdown because of COVID. It sort of made me feel like I had company, you know, being able to interact with other people. And I think that's what really drew me in about it the most.
Yeah, I mean, it's whenever someone asks me about, you know, why, like, because I think coming to the platform as a viewer, yes, I think taking the leap to streaming, for me, it was that feeling of like hanging out with a bunch of your friends and playing video games, like that. It simulates that feeling, that environment of just hanging out with a bunch of your buddies and playing games. And you know, as a guy in his 30s, you don't get that as much anymore. So
no, definitely not.
Right. So to sort of like recreate that is I think a really cool thing. I think another one of the things that sort of drew me into Twitch was, and this is sort of the other side of me that you know, it shows up in my stream. It's one part of what my Twitch username comes from. But I also was really into people opening up Pokemon cards. And then I discovered that there were people that would sell you packs and open them for you on Twitch and then mail you the cards. Oh, wow. And I thought, oh my God, like, I don't have to go to a store. I don't have to hunt them down. This was, as you said, around the time of the COVID lockdowns. So supply chains were crazy. It was hard to find Pokemon cards. And it was a hobby I was very much into since I was a kid, basically. So yeah. It was really hard to find them. But then I saw these people and I was like, wait, you can just buy cards from these people and they'll send it to you. So that kind of drew me into. So simultaneously, I was watching speedrunners like Matt or like Josh Sandwich or like Pessimism or whoever, but also watching these like Pokemon pack openings and like purchasing. I would purchase cards as well. And then there was something about, you know, the person would open the pack for you, you would get a really cool card, and there'd be this huge crazy reaction from the streamer and from the chat. And it was like, well, I had never shared that with anyone. Like my pack openings were always just a personal thing, or like a personal hobby thing. But to share that with everyone else, that sort of like hype vibe and that community, like it was like I like that. Now Twitch is my thing, you know, because it's I'm getting it from like two things that I'm really, really like interested in. Two things that are my hobbies, you know, gaming in general and pack, you know, Pokemon card collecting, whatever. So that's kind of what drew me in. Yeah, both those things.
See, speaking of Pokemon cards, and this was years and years ago, back when I was into collecting Pokemon cards, which is something that, you know, I didn't keep up with, and I now kind of regret, especially like you say, you know, seeing that there's so many more people out there that do it. But yeah. I remember as a kid, we went to Tesco, which is a supermarket over in the UK, and it was around about the time the Johto region cards, I think they'd only been released maybe a week or two prior. And we goes to the supermarket with my parents. She had me and my older brother. we both got bought a packet of Pokemon cards. It was just the one packet, and it was the small one, which I think you got like 11 cards in, possibly even less. And I remember opening the pack, the first ever pack that I got of the Johto region, and I got a shiny Lugia card. Yeah. And I ended up getting my cards taken off me that weekend purely because I wouldn't shut up about it.
Oh man, that's the worst. That's the worst. Yeah, that was I believe it's called Neo Genesis was the set that you're referring to. The one where the Lugia comes from. It's the Johto League ones. It was like Neo Genesis, Neo Destiny, Neo Revelations, and then Neo. Oh God, I can't remember the other one. I can't believe I'm forgetting this. All right, well, there was 4. I know there were 4. But yeah, that's awesome. I love stories like that.
What about the Game Boy games? Were you ever into the Game Boy games?
That's how I actually got. That's how I got into Pokemon. Well, no, I got into Pokemon with the cards, and then the game. So yeah, the first game I got was Pokemon Yellow. Got that for Christmas and played that just every day. I as soon as I'd get home from school, boot up the Game Boy, and then the red, blue, yellow, silver, gold, crystal, ruby, sapphire, emerald. It was just after the ruby, sapphire, emerald generation that I went off to high school. Like I lived, and that's like grades 9 through 12. I went to a boarding school, and then I went off to college. And so those 8 years of high school and college, I wasn't into it. I didn't have any money, and I was like trying to grow up, so to speak. So I was like, no, you can't be into Pokemon cards anymore. Which was kind of stupid of me. I should have kept collecting and playing the games, but I kind of missed some generations there of Pokemon. And then when I graduated college, had a rough time finding a job. So I couldn't really get into anything. Then I would occasionally play the older games because nostalgia, whatever. And then once I actually had a stable job and I started like building my career, then I was like, okay, I now have adult money that I can use for this hobby of mine. So I started to buy the cards again, and I was able to buy them in quantities that I never could when growing up. I came from very humble beginnings, so my parents can only do so much. So I was able to get boxes and boxes of them. So kind of reignited things for me. But yeah, been into it for a long time.
Yeah, and one of the things that I remember the most about the Game Boy games, because I was around about the same age when I was massively into Pokemon, and I remember it got to a stage where our parents, myself and my older brother, they'd have to take our Game Boys off us when it came to bedtime, because what we would do is we would go to bed, wait until we knew that our parents had gone to bed, and then we'd get back up to put the light on so that we could sit on our Game Boys. And there was times where we were sat on them till like 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and then it comes to the following day and we can't get up for school, and so we got banned off being able to take them to our bedroom. But the amount of hours that we used to spend on those games was just absolutely insane.
Yeah. The next level of that is getting the worm light. It was a little attachment that would have a little light. It was basically like a reading light. Hiding. I see as hiding them under the pillow. Yeah, you would hide them wherever, and then play it whenever you could. But yeah, the worm light is what I used. This way, I didn't have to turn on the light and give away my my sneaky plan.
Yeah, the amount of times that we got caught was just ridiculous. So sort of coming away from gaming a little bit, I know obviously we had the conversation a couple of days ago about things to talk about when you do come on, and I remember one of the things you saying that you that you used to be interested in was Attitude Era Wrestling. Now, oh my God, how good was that era?
Yeah, that, I mean, oh man, if there were two or three big things that were part of my life back in the 90s, it was Pokemon, it was wrestling, and it was video games. Like those are the things that I made time for. Those are the things that yeah. So staying up late to watch, Monday Night Raw, or the pay-per-view events. When I was a kid, I mean, I guess it's fine for me to say this now because the statute of limitations is probably up, but we had like stolen cable, I guess you could say. we had the hot box, I think is what you call it.
Yeah.
It was the cable box that was rigged to get you all the channels, all the pay-per-views and everything, and you didn't have to pay for it. So so we would watch all the WrestleManias and the SummerSlams and all that good stuff. And I had all the action figures. I remember at school we would pretend like we were the wrestlers, and we would come up with like these matches and stuff. Like it was such a huge part of my childhood. Like posters up in the room, other the merchandise. Like I had a clock that was like the WWF Attitude Era clock. And each hour that it landed on, it would say a phrase of one of the superstars. So like, yeah, like what I see. So like when it got to The Rock, it's like, do you smell what The Rock is cooking, or something like that. So like that, it was a huge part of my childhood. Yeah.
Yeah, same. And so it's rather funny because I remember, I mean, I was always hot on the Hardy Boys. Jeff in particular, I absolutely idolized Jeff. I thought there was just something about him that made me fall absolutely in love with just his style of wrestling. And I sort of stopped watching around about the time that Jeff left. I think it was the first time, I want to say he got fired, because we all know, the personal struggles and the demons that Jeff has faced over the years.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward a couple of years, I was in high school, and I was staying at a friend of mine's house, and he was still massively into wrestling back at this time. Now, I'd not watched it for around about 3 years, and he says, Raw's on tonight, shall we watch the wrestling? And I'm like, dude, I've not watched it for a couple of years now. Like, I think it was 2005, so I'd have been 14 going on 15. I'm like, I'm too old for that kind of stuff now. He's like, oh, go on, I love watching it, blah, blah, blah. So I says, all right, fair enough, I'll sit and watch it with you. And it just so happened that particular episode of Monday Night Raw, it was around about the time the Edge was the top heel. He had the WWE title. And lo and behold, Jeff Hardy returned that night. And I was like, what are the chances of that? I'd stopped watching it because Jeff left. Right. Don't watch it for 3 years. And now he's come back. No Rainey's not in WWE anymore. He's over... Did he go over to AEW? Yeah, I believe he did. I believe he's now back with Matt in AEW. I'm not sure if he's still there or not, because I don't really keep up with AEW, to be honest. I think one of the only reasons that I still keep up with WWE these days is just habit. Like, because since then, I mean, obviously we're going back like 18 years there.
Yeah.
It's just been a habit of mine. It's just, keep up with what's going on. I'll still religiously watch the Rumble, and I'll religiously watch WrestleMania, because they're the two that I always wanted to make sure I caught, was the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. But apart from that, I just read on websites, what's going on, try and keep myself up to date, see who the top guys are and all that kind of jazz. Nowhere near as much into it as what it used to be, but I do still enjoy it.
Yeah, for me, again, around the same time that I went to high school, I kind of took a step back from watching wrestling. It also, like, it started to change. It's what they call the ruthless aggression era, I think is what they called it. Some things started to change. Some of the wrestlers started to really not be featured on a weekly basis that I was really, into watching. Whether that's, The Undertaker was my favorite wrestler, and he wasn't being featured as much, or some of the really great storylines had ended, whether that was the formation of the groups like DX and the Ministry and the Corporation, like that. Like, all that stuff was like so cool to me, but like all that stuff started to fade away, and they started to prop up new guys, the John Cenas and the whoever, Batista, Randy Orton. Those guys started to come in, and they were fine as wrestlers. They always put on good matches, but the storylines and their presence didn't kind of click with me. And again, I was sort of like going through adolescence and changing my interests and stuff. But yeah, and then I tried to sort of watch it again a little bit as I in my 20s, but it just felt so different.
Yeah.
It felt very nerfed almost, because they couldn't do the same things. Like you were saying, like Jeff and Matt Hardy, when they would put on like a tables, ladders, and chairs match with other tag teams, we're not going to get stuff like that again.
No,
we're not going to get Edge doing a spear off the top of a ladder. Like, we're not getting that again. Right?
No, definitely not.
We're not getting Jeff Hardy jumping off the top of the Titantron, the screen, onto someone else. We're not getting that anymore. And that's kind of I don't know, that's kind of like it's a good and a bad thing. It's good for the wrestlers because they're not going to like break themselves in half, but it's bad for us because they set the bar for us of like, hey, this is what you can expect from our productions. And then they had to bring it down. So, no longer getting guys thrown through the Hell in the Cell like Undertaker and Mankind. You're not going to get guys. I'm trying to think of like some other like really crazy aggressive stuff that they used to do, like setting themselves on fire and stuff. Like, you're not going to get that. Yeah.
No, and and you know what? You've obviously you've mentioned the Undertaker there a couple of times. I've actually been to see WWE live a number of times now. Obviously, when they've come over to the UK, they've come to Manchester, and I remember one of the first shows that I went to, which was SmackDown. It was around about the time that they were really trying to push Jeff toward the top of the card. And this particular episode of SmackDown, the main event was Jeff Hardy versus Undertaker. I have never in my life felt so intimidated as what I did when that gong hit and the lights came down and the blue lights came up and Undertaker started walking out. Like, and I was in my 20s at the time. It's not like I was a child anymore. I was sort of on my way to becoming the man that I am today. But I'm sat there in the middle of this, I think 16,000 people stadium that was, arena, sorry, not stadium, that was almost full. I don't think there was very many empty seats. And I was freezing cold during that entrance. Like, my hairs were stood on end. It was genuinely one of the most intimidating, best experiences of my life. And obviously, unfortunately, you're not going to get to experience that anymore now, because now, sadly, the Undertaker's now retired, and I don't see him being one of those guys that's like Shawn Michaels-esque or Ric Flair-esque that, retires because he's too old and can't do it anymore, and then years down the line comes back. I really don't picture that for the Undertaker at all.
Yeah, I think the sort of level of respect and the reputation he created. I don't know if you got a chance to see. There was a documentary that he did, and it sort of just chronicled from, I think, 2018 up until his retirement. Some of those final few matches that he did, And I think you're right. I don't think he's gonna do that. I don't think he's gonna come back and do that sort of thing. You can see that in his last few matches, it just wasn't the same. But speaking to sort of like seeing that live, right? Like a big part of the WWE's success is just the production value, right? Like someone's entrance and their character is just as important as the technical wrestling in the ring itself. So that scary, you know, that vibe that the Undertaker always put on was great. And I only went to one live show when I was very little. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, in Madison Square Garden, where the Undertaker, he had a match that night, and you're right, the vibe, and that was back in 94, 95, when his entrance was still spooky. They still turned off the lights, you know, you heard the gong, but it was more of that early mid 90s Undertaker, the very, like when that character first was getting big, and it was still a crazy vibe. It was so long ago, and I was so young that I remember at like the concession stands, they were still selling like those foam number one fingers for Hulk Hogan, like Hulkamania. And you know, he had left to WCW sometime in the earlier mid 90s. So the fact that they were still selling those things, and the Ultimate Warrior was still like a big character, that's how far back it was that I saw that live event.
And you know what? It's funny that you mention Warrior, because myself and my flatmate were speaking about him a couple of days ago, and you know, tragically, he was entered into the Hall of Fame a couple of years ago. They had the whole WrestleMania weekend where you have the Hall of Fame ceremony, then you have the WrestleMania, and they brought him out the following Monday night on Raw, and he gave this big speech about how, you know, the spirit of the Warrior will live on forever. And then the following day, he was found dead. It was crazy. Yeah. And we were having the discussion that now when you look back at that speech that he gave, it's almost as if like he knew.
Yeah.
Like he knew that his clock was ticking, like his time was up. The way that he'd spoke, and that was crazy. I mean, Warrior was never that was those kind of days. The Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior, they were a little bit before I got into wrestling. It wasn't round about the Attitude Era where I got into it. And it's quite funny actually, because it was my grandmother that got me into wrestling, of all people. We used to go religiously. We'd go round to our house every Saturday morning, and Saturday mornings was when you had the rerun of Friday Night SmackDown over in the UK, and she'd always be watching it religiously. Every single Saturday she'd be watching it, and that's why ultimately I ended up following wrestling.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's cool that, you know, it's cool when no matter who it is, grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, whoever, you know, gets you into that sort of thing, because it builds that sort of family connection as well. But that's cool. That's good times.
So coming back to obviously the whole streaming environment and Twitch and whatnot, obviously you and I, you know, we've been doing this for a while now. I mean, I'm coming up for 3 years now. I'm not too sure about myself.
I just passed 2 years a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
All right. Okay. How long do you envision yourself carrying on with the whole Twitch journey and the streaming sort of journey?
I don't see an end point. I mean, I also don't like thinking about a timeline of it, because just as I discovered Twitch in a really organic way, I may discover something else in an organic way that may draw me away from it. So I really can't, you know, say for sure. I think as long as I'm as I still enjoy playing video games, as long as I still enjoy these interactions, and as long as I still have the time and the means to do so.
Well, yeah, that's a big one.
Right. So I mean, the thing is, my wife and I, we don't have any children. I do have a pretty grueling career that takes up a lot of time and energy. So, who knows where my career is going to be headed, 5-10 years from now. So there's like so many factors that, like, right now I'm just thinking ahead to the next game, right? Like, I'm thinking ahead to, hey, I'm gonna play these games that I never played before. Like, I'm gonna try Tomb Raider. I'm gonna try Dino Crisis. I'm gonna stream things that I never have streamed before. So like Silent Hill, or I'm trying to think about it. I've never played Dead Space. I want to play that. Then there's like new games coming out: Starfield, Hogwarts Legacy, RE4 remake. Whatever they've got planned for RE9, Silent Hill 2 remake. So like, as long as these things kind of continue to keep me excited and ready to keep playing, hopefully a CVX remake. Yeah, hopefully a CVX remake. And as long as I still enjoy playing the classics, like, I do not get tired of playing Resident Evil 1, 2, 3 OG and CVX and Zero, and like, those things, I don't get tired of them. So as long as all those things are still in place, I don't see myself stopping, anytime soon. But again, I it's kind of hard to put with so many factors. It's kind of hard to say for sure.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, like you said, especially when we enjoy our craft as much as what we do, and it's something that, we do invest a lot of time and a lot of effort into what we do, and money. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't like to think the amount that I've invested into my channel. And I was sort of touching on the fact earlier on that, now that I've got myself what I consider to be the start of a successful career, it's something that I'm obviously going to invest more money into. I mean, my current setup, the setup that I've got now, I've invested at least 4 figures into. And I'm lucky that I've only had to spend the amount that I've had to spend, because the computer that I've got, I'd probably say I could sell now for over £1,000. And I got it relatively cheap, because the computer that I have is the one that Matt had before he built the one that he now currently has. And I remember back when he was talking about building his own rig and getting this and getting that, when that first came around, immediately I went to him and I said, well, if that's what you're going to do, what are you doing with the computer that you've currently got? And he just said, well, I've not even given it any thought, I'll probably sell it. So I said, right, well, when you come to sell it, do me a favour, give me first refusal. Like, if you're going to sell it, approach me first, which he did do. Bless him, he actually drove all the way from his home to mine, which is a good,
oh wow,
I want to say 100 plus mile journey. Maybe a little bit less. I think he said it took him 2 hours to drive up here. Came and dropped it off for me, helped me get set up, configured my OBS. Got my son to call me a shit gamer while he was here. I was like, yeah, thanks for that.
It wouldn't be a trip from Matt unless something like that happened.
Oh, God, no. And do you know what? Speaking of Matt, I mean, I've had the pleasure of meeting Matt in person several times now. There was the time that he came to my house. There's a couple of events that we've both gone to. And I think that's the other thing that I like the most about Twitch is the personal relationships that I've since formed. I mean, there's people in the chat now, but case in example, Amber92. I've known Amber basically since I started on Twitch. I started in the April, she started in the May, and I think we met each other in the June. And now 3 years on, we've got this amazing friendship where it's not only online, we speak offline as well. When she's going through personal stuff, she'll come to me for advice and I go to her for advice. And I just think being able to develop relationships like that with something that just simply started out as me sitting in front of, well, it was actually in front of my TV at the time because I streamed direct from console. Being able to do something like that, I feel is just, it's what makes Twitch what Twitch is today for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of which, like, I know obviously it's a little bit more difficult for you, being on the complete opposite end of the planet. Is there any sort of events, in-person events coming up that you've sort of got your eye on?
No, to be honest, I don't. I don't even look into them. Between work and Twitch and just life in general, not things don't just line up the right way. If I have time off work, I work in education, so we have certain periods of the year off. It either doesn't line up or something else is going on, so I don't even look into it. I mean, there might be some sort of conventions or whatnot that take place here in New York that I might consider, but actually traveling somewhere for an event, I don't think I would have the time. The time is really just the biggest barrier right now. I just don't think I would have it.
Yeah, that's that's sort of an issue that I've almost faced myself over the last 12 months. This is something I've touched on, in a couple of the episodes on the podcast. But obviously I don't stream now anywhere near as much as what I did, say, 18 months ago, just like you say, simply because of availability. So when I was streaming an awful lot, at one point I was streaming 6-7 days a week, which is too much. For anybody that's in the chat right now that's maybe looking to start streaming, I would say 6-7 days a week is too much because the burnout is real. Mm-hmm. Whereas now, over the last 12 months, I get on twice, maybe 3 times. And don't get me wrong, I don't think if I had the option to, I would change that fact, because I feel that now that it's not something that I'm doing every single day, I feel if anything it's actually helped. So although my channel in terms of growth has slowed down a little bit, what I am seeing is an improvement, a slow but sure improvement in my numbers. All topping off with obviously what happened on Friday when I was offered the partnership with All Key Shop. That for me was sort of a surreal moment, to be honest with you.
Congrats, dude.
Thank you very much. Is there anything that you've got in the pipeline for your channel specifically, like maybe a new run that you've got your eyes on, or a run that you're going to go back to, or anything like that?
Yeah, I put an announcement on my Discord recently, just giving everyone an idea of the things that I have in mind for what I want to do. I'm going to pull it up on my phone because I want to make sure that I am speaking accurately. But yeah, I sort of just put a list. I said I'm going to be doing more first playthroughs, like Tomb Raider, RE Survivor, different difficulty levels for games. I've never done Village of Shadows for RE8, so I would try that for the first time. I still haven't I still haven't done the RE8 DLC. Then first streams, meaning games that I played before but I've never streamed them. So the Silent Hill series, Star Fox 64, The Last of Us, which I've already started streaming. I would do challenge playthroughs like knife only or handgun only, things like that. I would do various mods. I've never played the RE1 Challenger mod. RE2 Code Nightmare is another one that I wanted to try. In terms of speed runs, I think the next one I want to learn is CVX. Then RE2 Remake, most likely. I also want to try speed runs for the category extensions for RE2 OG. But then other stuff, I've also started to do a challenge on Pokemon Yellow, just trying to like complete the Pokedex and catch all 151. So, just stuff like it. Because like another thing that I think has been good for me is I don't look at my numbers very often. If I do, it's more like hey, that was cool. I'm not specifically looking for a number. I'm looking for an experience, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to play something, it's because first and foremost I feel like playing it.
Yeah.
So like even on Friday I did like a viewer's choice. The 4 games that I listed are games that I felt like playing. So I think that's kind of what I'm after. I'm after an experience, and the experience is I'm going to have fun playing whatever it is I'm playing. Now, I would love for people to come and hang out, because that is the other half of the experience. But I think, especially in those moments where there's a bit of a lull, or people are off doing their own thing, they can't be in chat. It's good to have that other side of the experience of like, I'm still playing a game that I enjoy. So even if other people are lurking or doing their own thing, I'm still having a good time. And I think that's kind of what I'm after. So in all those games that I listed in categories and difficulties and whatever, it's like those are things that I feel like playing. So I also don't feel that pressure of like, oh man, I'm known as the speed runner, so I've got to do speed runs all the time. Like, no, if I want to play Pokemon Snap, I'm going to play Pokemon Snap. If you want to come hang out, come hang out. Otherwise, there's no like obligation. I also like, sometimes people will be like, oh, sorry, I haven't been in chat in a while. I'm like, don't apologize. Like nobody's obligated. So,
Yeah.
So that in terms of like, my goal is to just have an experience, have a good time, have fun. And that starts with, am I playing something that I enjoy? And then if other people enjoy it as well, good times. It only enhances the experience.
Yeah, and do you know what? I remember that got said to me on Friday night just gone. So Friday was when I started streaming the Final Fantasy VIII Crystal mod for the first time. Now, I'd been told about this particular mod and, what was different about the game and the mechanics of it and whatnot. But then when I started playing it, like, the realization truly hit in on how much was different. And and I've been saying this literally all weekend because I've been playing it all weekend. It literally is like playing through the game for the first time all over again. And I remember, I believe it was Rain, posted a comment in the chat at one point saying it's so good to see you like so excited about a game again. And that's probably touching on what you've just said there about making sure you're doing something because you enjoy it. I think when your audience, or the people that are in your chat, should I say, are witnessing you enjoying the game so much, people then enjoy your stream more because it comes across a lot. And I think that's one of the only negative sides that I can say for myself personally about speedrunning is, when you get stuck in that rut which we've all had, where you just, no matter what you do, something goes against you, the game won't let you play, or, you can't find that time, or you can't pull that strat off, and you start to get frustrated with it. I think that kind of comes across, and people aren't going to enjoy the experience as much. I mean, to be fair though, that's something I've noticed with yourself. Doesn't really tend to be an issue. I don't recall ever sitting watching you speedrun where the game is being really horrible. Like, again, if we go back to RE3, I've seen that game really punish you at times. And I don't think I've ever witnessed you getting massively frustrated with it. I don't know if that's just because you don't get frustrated or you handle it better than what I do.
It's happened with one game. It's happened with RE1 Remake, where I think that's the closest I've gotten to like full on frustrated. I'm I wouldn't say rage quit because I don't like slam the controller and like but there were a couple times where I was learning the speed run and then trying, like once I learned it, I was grinding it a little bit, and there were sometimes I was just like, you know what, guys, I got to go off because this is just too frustrating. So it's happened before, but that's why I haven't gone back to it as a speed run.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to go back to something that is going to make me feel that way, like make me feel that frustration. Like that's not fun, right? I'm like, sure, would I want a better time, but I'm not going to sacrifice like my happiness just to see some numbers on a screen, So and that's just the way I see it. Like, it's totally not a judgment on anyone else. Like, other people can push past that frustration and like keep grinding a speed run and meet the goals that they set for themselves, and that's great. It's what I think separates the really great speed runners from the rest of us. So so yeah, with RE1 Remake, that's the one that kind of did that to me. But I think it's also why like I've taken a step back from speedrunning, because not that I've become frustrated with it, but I've become very neutral about it.
Yeah.
It's not creating that sort of excitement and joy that it did, which may mean that I need to just learn a new speed run, which I feel excited about learning some new ones. And that may bring the speed running side of me back. But I think for right now, I'm just enjoying like trying new games or trying new difficulties or new categories or whatever. If you look at like the last like month or two of my streams, it's always like first playthrough, first stream, challenge run, casual playthrough, like all of those different categories. And I have had more fun in these last 2 months than I did the previous 2 months, where I was really trying to grind, speed runs. So, I think if anything for the near future, that's the direction of my stream. It's just going to be, it's just going to be whatever I feel like doing that day. There was a period of time on my streams where I would put out a weekly schedule, and I would say I'm playing this on this day, that on that day, and it would all be planned out. That didn't work for me, right? It's got to be, what do I feel like playing right now? And then that's what I'm going to play. And I'm not going to worry about, how that may or may not affect, numbers or whatever. I'm just going to play whatever I have fun with. And like you said, it kind of creates the environment for people to want to hang out because they see your enthusiasm, they see you having a good time, and they connect with it either because they like the game or because they see you having a good time or because conversation sort of sprouts organically from it. And so I would say that's the best for all parties involved. Just play what you like, because that, both sides are going to enjoy that.
Yeah, of course. And I think, like you say, if you can get that element right, you can get the enjoyment part of it right and create an atmosphere for the people that are in your chat that they can witness somebody enjoying something so much and get a kick out of that and be able to interact with people and whatnot. I think if you get that element right, whether it takes a month, 6 months, a year, however long it takes, I truly believe that eventually the numbers will just look after themselves. You're not going to have to worry about it because people they're not tuning in to witness a particular game or a particular run. What they're doing is they're tuning in to have that experience with yourself. They're not watching Resident Evil 3, for example. They're watching ThatOneVenusaur, whether that be whatever game it is that you are playing. I'm going to start to getting things wrapped up.
Yep.
I think the one question, I've come out with this a couple of times and I really like coming out with it now because it generally tends to get people thinking. If, for whatever reason, you could only ever play one game or one series of games and you couldn't play any other game for the rest of your life, what game would you go to and why?
Well, you kind of open it up by saying series of games, because that makes the question a little easier. If it was one single game, that would make it really tough. But if it was a series, oh man, it's either Resident Evil or Pokemon, but I can't decide. I would say, oh God, this is so difficult because there's also variability within the series, right? I've discovered from streaming that you can do all these categories and you can do these challenges, and it exists in both of the series that I enjoy. So, oh God, this is a tough question. I would go with Resident Evil because I feel like with that one, I don't know, there's just a little bit more sophistication to it, I would say, and there's a little bit more of an in-depth story, and I feel like there's more things you can discover the more playthroughs you have. Not to say that, the Pokemon series is without those things, but I think there's just a little bit more depth with the Resident Evil franchise.
See, I'm very much the same, where I'd be split between two, which would be Resident Evil and Final Fantasy. And I think I would probably stick with Resident Evil purely because of the experiences that I've had with it over the last couple of years. Meeting the likes of yourself, the rest of Team RPD, the people that are in chat right now that I've met. There's always the question there that, let's say, for example, when I came onto Twitch, I'd have decided to be a Final Fantasy streamer. Would I have still met the same people? Well, probably not, because I'm not playing the same sort of game that introduced me to those people in the first place. So I would have to go with Resident Evil. But in the same breath, I'd then hate myself for it, because I could never play Final Fantasy again.
Right. It's a tough decision when you have multiple interests like that.
Yeah, very, very tough. Right, okay, so like I said, I'm going to wrap things up. Is there anybody in particular that you'd like to give a shout out to before we do wrap things up?
Just Team RPD in general. Just everyone on the team has been really, really great, welcoming, helpful, funny, entertaining, like all the positive adjectives you could think of. Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to go through the entire list because our team is like 20 people deep, I think.
I think it is exactly 20, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just, I have no experience to draw from in terms of like, oh, I was part of this other Twitch team or whatever. But I would say the bar has been set high. So, yeah. If there are other Twitch teams out there, just know that we have a really strong community, strong bond, and it's a great team. So shout out to the whole team.
Right. Well, listen, Venusaur, again, like I said at the beginning, I just want to say a massive, massive thank you for agreeing to come on. I think it's basically proved the point that I made the other day when we were talking about certain topics, and we just basically said, you know what, we'll just wing it because, it's me and you, we'll get through it anyway, which we've managed to do. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on, my dude, and I'm sure I'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah, sounds good. I appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you to everyone who's been hanging out and listening. And I look forward to chatting with you all on various streams. Appreciate it.
No worries. Take care, my dude.
All right. Have a good one.
You too, mate. Bye-bye. Okay.